Canada's Drag Race versus the World 2 was a very interesting season of Drag Race from a fandom perspective. It's pretty evenly split down the middle of people who adored it and people who weren't impressed, and then people who were thrilled with the winner, and then people who are calling Riggory about the winner. I made a whole video a few weeks ago diving into why I thought this season was the best of the year so far. So go watch that first if you missed it. It'll contain a lot of context for my thoughts I'll be giving in this video. But you guys already know that I adore this season, but you'll have to stick around till the end of the video to see my thoughts on Lemon's crown. Canada's Drag Race versus the World 2, which is a Paramount Plus, sorry, not a Paramount Plus. It gets so confusing because season 16 was on MTV, All Stars 9 is on Paramount Plus, Canada versus the World is on WoW Presents Plus. I wish it was easier to figure out where everything is and to be able to access it from anywhere. Well, that is where today's sponsor, Surfshark VPN, comes in very handy. Surfshark VPN keeps your identity safe by encrypting all of the information sent between your device and the internet. This keeps your personal data protected from big companies or cyber criminals, and also swaps the real location of your device with a new one. This way you can virtually travel to anywhere across the globe. If you're on vacation, you can switch your location back home so you don't have to miss anything that you won't get in your new territory. Or if a certain show isn't on a streaming service in your country, but is on the streaming service in a different country, just visit there virtually and watch whatever you want. Surfshark has over 3,200 servers in 100 countries all around the globe. Surfshark also masks your IP address, which makes you private online. So your city, your country, your download history is not linked to your identity. So let's say you want to go to a country where Drag Race is just easily on Netflix, you can do so using Surfshark VPN. Secure your privacy and enter coupon DRAGDETECTIVE to get 4 extra months free at surfshark.com/dragdetective. That's surfshark.com/dragdetective. Thank you so much to Surfshark for sponsoring today's video. At the start of these Riggory videos, I usually break down the cast and talk about the few queens who I think may have come in with potential reasons why production might see them as favorites and potentially push them. But with this cast, literally 6 out of the 9 queens I'd say have one reason or another why production might see them as a favorite. Alexis Mateo and Eureka have both been on 3 seasons of Drag Race prior to this one and have great relationships with WoW, doing Work the World, doing the Vegas show, popping up for cameos and episodes, being lip sync assassins, doing YouTube content. And then Kennedy Davenport is also a darling for WoW, going on their tours, coming back for All Stars as a lip sync assassin, coming on the pit stop. These are 3 huge names to get for a Canadian season, and I'm sure production wanted to keep them all around for as long as they could, since with these international seasons, there are so many people who only watch American Drag Race, not even UK, not Canada. They just watch American Drag Race on VH1. And I'm sure that they're casting these, very high-profile American girls to draw in more viewers to these versus the World seasons. Lemon and Miss Fiercalicious are also huge names from Canada and 2 of the biggest fan favorites from Canada's Drag Race. After seeing how the Canadians did on the first Canada versus the World, being the first 2 out and then the third leaving the competition at top 6, I'm sure they wanted to ensure that Canadians stood a bigger chance this time around. And then Cheryl, who was on both UK1 and the first UK versus the World, is obviously a queen that fans and production love, but she'd yet to truly shine competition-wise on any season she competed on. So while it was definitely a risk to cast her, as she may, flame out again like she did on UK versus the World, I do think she was someone production wanted to give a redemption arc to. So that leaves Kahena, LaPhil, and Tynomi Banks as the 3 queens who don't jump out as potential production favorites from the cast. And guess who were the first 3 out of the season? Yup, it's giving All Stars 4 in that way, where the 3 queens who did the worst on their original seasons do about the same the second time. And while that can be frustrating, I know I really wanted to see LaPhil make it to the end, it does leave us with an insane top 6 where every single one of them is a powerhouse of the franchise. LaPhil and Tainomi I actually think are really great casting choices. They both showed so much promise on their original seasons and did a lot better than their track records say they did. I think they were both heavily overlooked by production, and so getting to see them come back and get a second shot was very exciting to see. Kahena is an interesting pick. I didn't watch France 1, but I don't remember there being much talk about her elimination being controversial or earth-shattering. I don't feel like her name comes up that often before the season started. And unfortunately, I think she may have been cast to fill the potential first out role. A lot of these All-Star seasons of recent do this where they cast someone that's pretty outside of the box and surprising to see get a second chance. And then they get a nice boost preseason, and then they go home first. It's not as bad as like sending home a gigantic fan favorite first and potentially tarnishing their legacy like we've seen with some All-Stars like Coco and Derek and Lemon. I think Kahena's casting is similar to that of like Serena Chacha, Monica Beverly Hills, and now Drag Race has its own Francesca Hoagie, Francesca, and that is nothing against her drag, nothing against her as a performer. I just think some people are better at the Drag Race format than others are naturally, and I think we saw that with Kahena this episode as well. And there also needs to be a discussion about the resources that some of these queens get, because of course queens like Eureka, like Alexis, like Kennedy, even Lemon are going to have access to the top tier designers if Eureka can remember to pay them. And they can get props made and all of these things, whereas someone like Kahena, someone like LaPhil might not and probably don't have access to those same high-profile designers. And unfortunately, Drag Race has become a competition where, like, you can buy your way to some high placements at points. Specifically in episodes like The Ball or any look-based challenge. So I do think that those first three come in at a disadvantage, both from, like, resources perspective, but also they've just done less Drag Race than the other six have. And you would hope that when you're doing the same challenges 3 or 4 times, that you can figure out the formula that works for you and be able to nail these things. So it's definitely an uneven cast, but I still think that while on paper it looked a little crazy, in the season itself, it worked perfectly. So let's dive into the season, starting off with the premiere episode, which has the girl group main challenge. And I loved how we got 3 different songs. All 3 songs were great. The quality of everything in this episode was fantastic. It was a great premiere. I also loved how well this episode set up a lot of the storylines for the season. We see Kennedy and Alexis are great friends and will definitely be working together throughout the season. And we see Eureka as the odd woman out of the American Girls, acknowledging that she needs to find friends if she's going to succeed on this season. So she links up with Kahena, who also doesn't know anyone on the season and is the only queen representing her country. We also see that Lemon and Cheryl are close friends and share kind of similar trauma from their early eliminations on UK vs. The World. We see that the Canada girls are all friends, especially Tainomi and Fierce, and they really want to set up an alliance, but Lemon is kind of on the outside of that, by her choice. We see that Lemon from the jump says she wants to play fair, she wants to go to the end with the strongest competitors, and it seems like other people like Fierce, like Tainomi, like Eureka, they're more willing to play a strategic game. This episode set up so many dynamics that have great payoffs in later episodes of the season. And I mean, I said this in my video about why I love this season, but truly, this is one of the best edited seasons I've ever watched. It juggles all of the storylines, all of the queens so well, and gives everybody a purpose, a motivation, and fleshes out how they fit into the group. We see the queens all perform in their groups, with the Slapbacks, who have the song Tongue Pop, pretty much standing out from the jump as the one to beat. They have Cheryl, whose entire drag persona is based off of girl group icons from the UK, Kennedy, who is an amazing dancer and singer, and then Lemon, who's known as a rapstress. So unsurprisingly, they work together great and they annihilate the challenge, very deservedly getting the top placements. Now, there's been talk about which of the 3 from this team deserve the win, and I think there are arguments for all 3 winning. They all had great runways, they all ate up the challenge. It's definitely a hard choice, but for me, Kennedy's lip sync was not the tightest, and between Lemon and Cheryl, Lemon's lyrics and delivery were better for her verse. Lemon is just such a natural at performing. She's always gonna give confidence, she's gonna have fun wordplay with her lyrics, and in the end, she looks like the main bitch of the group. So I was not shocked nor surprised by Lemon's win whatsoever. And now someone is leaf blowing my parking lot. So if you hear a really annoying, loud noise in the background, that's that. The safe group was The Face, who have the song This Beat, and I love the song so much. This might be my favorite song of the three. This group is LaPhil, Tynomi, and Fiercalicious, and wow, this was LaPhil's best episode of Drag Race ever. He was the clear standout from this group and devoured his verse. Also, yes, LaPhil goes by he, him, in and out of drag, and both times he discussed this on the show, it was cut out, which really sucks. I had people commenting on my last video wow, incredibly rude to call LaPhil he, him. I'm like, incredibly rude for you not to know his pronouns. But also, it is the show's responsibility to make sure that the entire audience is aware of how everyone wants to be identified, and they definitely dropped the ball by not including that segment on the actual show. Tynomi was also fantastic this episode and had such a great runway. This was a huge redemption for her from that abysmal girl group from Canada 1. Fierce, on the other hand, I think she's lucky that this was judged in teams. I mean, she was fine during her verse. She can perform well, but she seemed so checked out for the rest of the performance. And her lyrics were giving, I fed every Drag Race verse in AI, and this is what it came out with. She was one of the weakest of the challenge for me, but her runway was fantastic, and I loved how she did, a redemption runway, even though that wasn't a category this season, which I think it really should be, on every single All-Star season. The last group was Just Divas, who have the song Bopulence, probably the weakest of the three songs, and they really didn't do much else to improve it. They had the weakest choreo, the least inspired performances, and really the only standout of this group was Alexis. Poor Alexis does not have a great track record on this season, but I don't think what it looks like on paper is indicative of how she did on the season, because episodes like this, she did so well, and yet she was in the bottom three because her teammates let her down. She looked fantastic, her verse was fantastic, her runway was incredible, and she kept the energy up throughout the entire number. Kahena was pretty awkward throughout the performance. Her choreo didn't have the same energy as Eureka or Alexis's. Her verse was forgettable, and overall she was just outshined by Alexis. Eureka was also shockingly a bit awkward at points throughout the performance. It seemed like Alexis was the only one who 100% had the choreo down, but Eureka did shine during her verse. Unfortunately, her runway was the worst of the episode, and while I see the vision she was going for, I do not think it translated to the final product. So overall, it made sense why the last team was the bottom three, and while it sucks for Alexis as she did a great job, luckily Lemon won the challenge and was determined to beat the best as her strategy all season long, so she uses the beaver on Alexis. While Fierce and others would have loved to pin the two American girls against each other right off the bat and knock one out, this was definitely, I think, the correct strategy here. Lemon does give the beaver to Alexis, sparing her from lip syncing. I love this twist. It's all I've ever wanted from an All-Stars, and this season proved why it is the elite format to use. This means that Eureka and Kahena are in the bottom two together, lip-syncing to Meaningless by Charlotte Cardin, which is a very slow-tempo song, which is kind of surprising to see in a premiere lip-sync. It's sad to see Eureka go against her only friend so far in the competition, and for Kahena to be back in the same spot she was last season in the premiere, but Eureka does well in the lip-sync despite doing a high kick to a ballad, and sends her new friend home. It sucks for Kahena to be the double pork chop, but I'm glad at least being in one episode exposed her to a whole new audience that didn't turn into Drag Race France. So overall, I agreed with every placement in this episode. The next episode is my favorite of the season. It is the Hole episode, which is a parody of reality shows The Mole and The Traitors. And as a huge fan of reality shows like this, I was literally in heaven watching this entire episode. Unlike some comedy improv challenges where the queens are almost set up to fail with how bad the structuring and the characters are, everything about this challenge was perfectly set up. From the character descriptions, to the formatting, to the set, to Brad actually being a great host, and Lisa Rinna being so oblivious to what was going on. It was everything to me. So I'll just shortly run through each queen's performance overall this episode. Alexis was playing a Karen, and while I don't think she fully understood who her character was supposed to be, she's still naturally charismatic and funny, and was able to get some solid jokes and moments in her performance. And then on the runway category was Mother Nature, and her look was solid. She was the definition of, like, safe to me this week. Cheryl was playing a super fan of the show, and god damn it, she was improv perfection. She had planned bits, but she didn't rely solely on them. She was able to chime in and react to things without hogging the screen time. She knew exactly who her character was. And this is one of my favorite improv performances from any Drag Race season ever. Unfortunately for Cheryl, it was paired with one of, if not the worst look of the season. It's just like heartbreaking to watch her come so close to her first win and then, like, sabotage herself in the final moments. Eureka was playing a soap opera star, and I don't think she, like, figured out what angle to take in playing that character, because it wasn't really giving soap opera star, and her characterization was not, like, clear throughout the skit, but her runway was breathtaking and 100% kept her out of a possible bottom placement. Kennedy was the know-it-all, and my god, Kennedy will forever just be cemented as one of the best improvers of the entire franchise with both this performance and The Bachelor. The thing that I think has led to Kennedy's success in all of her seasons is that she doesn't overthink things. Like, she obviously cares about being there, but her, like, I don't give a fuck attitude lends her so much success in improv because she's just gonna go with the moment and do what she does best. She's not gonna think about all these different things that are gonna, like, clog down her performance. This was an incredible performance, my second favorite after Cheryl's, and her runway was my favorite of the night. And then Lemon gets the gay guy and makes a very smart decision to take the character in a much different direction than I think we all thought she was going to take it. She could kind of go like the typical white twink route, but that's far too similar to her own personality, and I think she knew that. So she did this, like, I don't even know how to describe this gay man, but we all know them. It worked perfectly, and she had a great runway to pair with it. It's so cool that the top 3 from episode 1 was also so clearly the top 3 from episode 2, and to be honest, they were the top 3 of the entire season. Lemon, Kennedy, and Cheryl all came out of the season looking amazing and adding so much success and improvement to their Drag Race journeys. And it's just so amazing to see since I love all 3 of them so much. LaPhil's character is a bit more open-ended, and I think this is where he really struggled. He was looking for love, that's his character, and it's less of a character trait and more of a character motivation. So he had to come up with a character that would make sense to have that motivation. I'm not saying, like, anything was rigged against him or anything. I just think this was a tough character to take on, and we saw that come to fruition in his performance. Unfortunately, he also struggled on the runway, with this being really his only runway flub of the entire season. Looking at all of the runways that he had prepared, it's so sad we didn't get to see more of them on the show. LaPhil is such a unique drag artist with a unique perspective, and I'm so glad we got to see him get his second chance, even if he didn't last as long as I would have wanted him to. Tainomi ends up taking on the kooky clairvoyant, and this is another character I think is hard to make funny because it's such a specific trait. she's not really able to do much with it, and her improving is not as strong as most of the other girls here. And on top of that, she has one of the weakest looks on the runway. Lastly is Fierce, who commits a drag race sin in this episode and chooses a character that's just pretty much her character on Drag Race. Compare like Fierce and Lemon in this episode. They both ended up with a character that could end up being very close to who they are on the show, but Lemon made the strategic decision to take her character in a very different direction, while Fierce basically just played herself. She had some fun moments, sure, but this was just Fierce. But then on the other hand, her runway was fantastic, one of the best of the episode. So looking at placements, I actually did agree with everything from this episode. The top 3 was very clear. The bottom 3 I think was pretty clear. I guess I could see an argument of maybe Eureka in the bottom over Fierce, but at least Eureka was trying something with her character. Fierce just felt like she was maybe phoning it in a little bit this week with the character that she chose. And then they both had incredible runways, so I'd give the edge to Eureka in this episode. And then, of course, Cheryl not winning. I think it makes sense. I tend to think that runways should be tiebreakers unless someone wears something either incredibly amazing or something horrific. And in this challenge, I'd probably give Cheryl an A+ and Kennedy an A, but Kennedy's runway was an A+, and Cheryl's was a D. So I think Kennedy getting the win here does make sense overall. We see Kennedy uses the beaver on Fierce, and that leaves Tynomi and LaPhil as the bottom 2, which does make sense. I think this was the clear bottom 2 from this episode. I am really sad this was the journey for Tynomi on the season. She was treated so poorly on Canada 1, and I feel like that made her feel inadequate, despite her doing so much better on her season than her track record would give her credit for. But it seemed like the second there was a comedy challenge or something not directly up her alley this season, she started to kind of buckle under the pressure and start to question her worth in the competition. And I hate that for her because her accolades are so impressive and her drag is so polished and so stunning. We lose LaPhil here, and while I do think he did lose the lip sync, he put up a damn good fight against Tynomi and really impressed the fandom with his episode 1 performance. So I'm glad at least he had one fantastic episode this season to prove why he deserves more love than he gets. And we move on to the AI ball. And I know some people were a bit lukewarm on this one, but I enjoyed it overall. The first 2 categories, AI Queens and Robotic, were fantastic to me. The last category is one they had to make themselves, and it's just a bit too open-ended. It's like futuristic supermodels, but like, I don't know. I just feel like a lot of people didn't know where to go with this based on the materials that were given to them. But this was a major episode for multiple queens who were in major need of a redemption, specifically Cheryl, Alexis, and Tynomi. All 3 had gone home on a ball or a design challenge previously, and all 3 were determined to rewrite that narrative on this season. Spoiler alert, only Alexis is able to do so. This was a huge episode for Alexis, who started off a bit rockier than her previous seasons. In the first 2 episodes of her first 3 seasons, she already either had a win or was in the top, and this season she had instead already had a bottom placement and a safe placement. So she needed like a standout moment badly, and this was the episode for her to stand out this season. Diving into each category, the AI Queen category was so fun, but you could tell who understood the assignment and who didn't. Alexis, Cheryl, Lemon, and Fierce really shined in this category, while Kennedy and Eureka had pretty like loose interpretations of AI, and Tynomi had a fun idea that just did not work out in execution. For the robot category, this could be one of the strongest ball categories of all time. There was not a single miss. I know people don't like Kennedy's look here. I don't care. I love it so much. Call that an unpopular opinion. I don't care. I love it. Alexis, Fierce, Eureka, and Lemon also were huge standouts in this category, but I truly don't think anyone had like a subpar look in this one. And then for the future supermodel category that they had to make themselves, again, I don't think anyone did terribly, but Kennedy, Cheryl, and Tainomi definitely had the least impactful looks on the runway. The fact that they end up as the bottom three makes sense. They each had a look that I think just did not work, while everyone else was pretty damn consistent. Now, there's a lot of people who feel like Lemon should not have been in the top of this episode, since her final look was pretty unmemorable, and I do have to agree. The first placement this season I disagree with is Lemon's high placement in the ball. The third look in a ball, I always weigh with more importance than the first two, since it's the one they have to make from scratch. So I always do like, the first two looks are worth 25%, and then the last look is worth 50%. Lemon had two great looks in the first two categories, but I'd put her maybe like fourth from the bottom for her design look, while Eureka, for the first look, was great, maybe just not super on theme. Her second look was great, and her third look was one of the best design looks of the week. We've seen Eureka do a lot of design looks throughout the years, and I do think this is one of her best. I love the face kini. I feel like it kind of fits the category better than a lot of the other ones do. And I think this should have nabbed Eureka a high placement. Or even just like give out an extra high placement, since there's only one safe placement anyway. Like I mentioned, Alexis wins this challenge, and it is very much deserved. While Fierce was close on her tail, Fierce's final look had nothing to do with the category at hand, and it did have some structural issues despite it being a fantastic look. Alexis maybe did the final category theme the best, and her entire look head to toe was perfection, as well as having two incredibly strong looks in the other categories. So as we've seen, with Alexis and Kennedy's friendship coming into the season, the result of her using the beaver on Kennedy makes total sense because of their alliance, but also just looking at track records. Cheryl and Kennedy have both been in the top both episodes prior, but Kennedy was actually able to snag a win. So Kennedy is safe, and we see a bottom two of Cheryl and Tainomi. And this episode is absolutely devastating as a Cheryl fan on first watch. The entire time, I was expecting her to go home against Tainomi in a lip sync, and with like every decision made throughout the episode, that was becoming more and more likely. Now there's a chainsaw outside. There's literally a chainsaw running, so let's hope this denoiser in Premiere Pro is doing its work and you don't hear anything. So, but it came down to Cheryl and Tainomi doing Avril Lavigne, an artist that sent Tainomi home on her original season. I was like accepting that Tainomi would get her Avril Lavigne redemption and Cheryl's time would be cut short yet again. Cheryl is just like such a good viewpoint character for fans watching at home. For some queens who are there to like bring drama, or they're just like super confident, it might be harder for the audience to relate to them at times. But Cheryl is that girl that everyone feels like is their good Judy. They can kiki with her, and it's just so down to earth and chill. And we want her to do well so badly. We want her to get that win, to get that redemption. And up to this point, she had been killing the season like no other season she'd been on, just narrowly missing the win the episode prior. So the thought of it all coming crashing down just halfway through the season was extremely upsetting to think about. So when the lip sync happens, and it's like pretty even throughout the whole thing, I was like quaking. I was shaking. I was like in tears. But in the end, Cheryl is able to capture the silliness of the song a little bit better and manages to outperform Tainomi Banks, earning her spot in the top 6. So while I was happy to see Cheryl stay, I was also sad for Tainomi, who I was so excited to see get her second chance. And while she may not have redeemed her Drag Race track record, she was able to show the world once again what an incredible performer she was in all 3 episodes of this season. The next episode might be my other favorite from this season. It's just like a perfect hour of television. It is the roast battles, and I would personally love to see this replace a regular roast on a season more often, especially on an All-Stars where we know these queens so well. We start the episode with a mini challenge where they have to lip sync while random things are being thrown at them. We only actually get 2 mini challenges during this season, but both of them were amazing. They put so much thought into the season, and you can tell when, like, even the mini challenges have so much production value behind them. As the winner of the mini challenge, Fierce gets to pick her rival in the reading battle, and she chooses Lemon. And this is where, like, I don't know what exactly some of Fierce's strategic decisions were on this season. She says she picks Lemon because she knows her the best and can come up with, like, solid reads for her. But, like, in the end, all of her reads of Lemon are pretty surface level and just kind of about, like, her friendship with Priyanka and her flopping UK versus the world. And Lemon is, like, a known, amazing reader. She won the reading challenge on Canada 1. She's always tweeting, like, funny, shady things. So, like, of everyone in that lineup, I would want to go against Lemon the least. So it's almost like she shot herself in the foot here, since you either win the battle or lose and are in the bottom. I really feel like Fierce went into the season almost like playing up a character a bit too much, and it left her with basically no allies, no one wanting to work with her in the end, and the entire cast attacking her back in episode 3 when she had her hissy fit over not winning. Even when she was becoming friends with Eureka, Eureka was over Fierce in the 3rd episode. I think Fierce was very focused on being great TV, which we all love her for, but it somewhat hindered her in the competition at the same time. Lemon gets to choose who picks their partner next and chooses Cheryl, with their prior friendship finally coming into play a bit, and Cheryl picks Eureka, which leaves the good friends Alexis and Kennedy partnered against each other. So this makes for some pretty fun dynamics in this episode as we get into the roast. Now, this episode is very much the culmination of Eureka's 4 seasons on the show. We've seen in past seasons it was kind of hard for Eureka to make friends due to her loud personality, her tendency to veer towards the dramatics. All-Star 6 really showed she could be softer and friendlier, but even on that season, she ends up in the top 5 with no allies to carry her to the top 4. She has to earn her way there herself. This season, it seemed like she had learned from her All-Star 6 mistakes and wanted an alliance, wanted people to help get her to the finale. She tries to link up with Kahena, but she went home. Then she grows close to Fierce, but Fierce ends up being the villain of the season and doesn't win any challenges that could potentially help Eureka out. So it all just doesn't really come to fruition for Eureka this season. But we do learn so much about her sobriety, her gender journey, and it's really great to see, like, a very authentic, very real Eureka, who I think knows she might be screwed once she gets into Untucked this episode. But we are getting ahead of ourselves. The first pair to duel is Lemon and Fierce Fierce has just, like, very surface level jokes, while Lemon is able to unsurprisingly read her incredibly well as improving off of Fierce's jokes. And Fierce ends up looking kind of very defeated and, like, awkward by the end of their duel, and it's a very clear Lemon win here. Next are Cheryl and Eureka, who both start out very strong, but after Cheryl takes a joke Eureka was going to use about Princess Fiona, it throws Eureka off, and she, like, never quite recovers. She tells this very, like, out-of-pocket joke about human trafficking. I, like, want to know exactly what happened with the Princess Fiona joke and how Cheryl got it and used it, but the show doesn't really tell us what happened there. And then last are Kennedy and Alexis, who are both good, but there's just, like, kind of like an air of awkwardness to theirs. Maybe it's because it's so chaotic, but it felt like both of them were trying to fill the air with as many ad-libs as possible after the little ad-libs from the first 2 sets went off well. But this was definitely the closest of the duos. But Kennedy winning does make sense, since her losing her wig to make fun of Alexis's toupee was the best joke of their set. Now, there is some controversy and riggory we can talk about for this episode. A lot of people disagreed with Kennedy's overall win of this episode, myself included. We learned later that the queens did walk the runway, with the category that they all wore being razzle-dazzle. Fierce actually had parts of her look that she took off for the reading part of the challenge that we never saw on TV, that made it look like she was being cut in half by a magician. The question is, if they walked the runway and received runway critiques, why was it cut? I think it was because they needed to justify Kennedy's win here. She obviously had the worst look. I mean, I guess it's not worse. It's just like, it's not bad. It's just a dance bodysuit. A nicely made one, and she looked great, but it was just not at the level everyone else was wearing. But we also learned that 5 of Kennedy's runways were lost in the mail, so she had to do a lot of improving for her looks this season. If runways come into play, Lemon winning makes total sense. She had the funniest jokes of the night, she had one of the best looks of the night after Alexis and Fierce. Even Cheryl makes more sense. Her look was cute, her jokes were funny. Kennedy had probably my 3rd favorite set behind those two, and had my least favorite look of the episode. But if they can cut out all the runway critiques and act like the looks don't even matter, it's much easier to justify a Kennedy win. And you're probably asking, why do they want Kennedy to win so badly? I think they very much wanted the Eureka and Fierce lip sync. Eureka's whole storyline this season was making new friends, and then she sent her first one home. Now she's potentially in the position to send a second one home. I also think they did not want Eureka and Alexis to lip sync against each other, since Eureka is an incredible lip syncer and potentially could have sent Alexis home. If it's Eureka versus Fierce, either option going home makes sense storyline-wise. Eureka going home makes sense based off of her track record. Fierce going home helps Eureka's storyline of sending her friends home, and since Fierce is the villain, her going home is like her comeuppance. I think Alexis was someone production did want to have at the end. She was so underrated by the judges, but beloved by the audience after All Stars 5, and is such a legend of the show. She makes great TV. Her confessionals all season long were hilarious. She's someone you want around. Unfortunately, her track record was not the best this season, but 2 of her 3 bottoms were due to a technicality. Like we talked about, she did great in the girl groups, but her teammates dragged them down to the bottom, and she did solid in this roast battle, but because of the rules, she had to be in the bottom 3. So Kennedy winning the challenge ensures that she's saving Alexis. We see that friendship storyline play out, and then we get to see either Eureka or Fierce leave. But also, it's like last week we saw Alexis won, she saved Kennedy. This week, Kennedy wins, she saves Alexis. It just makes sense. It makes for a very satisfying storyline. Eureka loses the lip sync to Hush Hush, but more than any other season, she leaves as a very 3-dimensionally edited queen, and we learned a lot more about her this season, so there's kind of like a piece behind her elimination. I mean, at top 6, I was scared about any of these queens leaving since they all have big legacies, and I was worried the show wouldn't be able to make it feel justified, but they did a great job in giving Eureka an amazing send-off. Now, for the one clunker episode of the season, and it's really just for the challenge. I mean, the rest of the episode is great. I love how in my previous video about this season, I talked about how all of the challenges were iconic. They were nailing everything, and then days later, this came out. It is Snatch Game, the Rusical. Listen, I appreciate a big swing, and this was a big swing, but not every risk is going to work out, and this challenge just did not make sense. I get trying to switch up the formula by combining 2 iconic challenges, but the way this was formatted was just like so confusing and weird. We see them each come out as their Snatch Game character, but they're also like playing themselves in the Rusical knowing that they're playing Snatch Game. It's weird, it's kind of meta, it did not work. So I guess there's like 2 parts of this challenge to judge. The Snatch Game part, which I think Fierce, Lemon, and Cheryl all did well at, with Lemon being my favorite and Cheryl being very close behind. Susan Boyle is like such a good Snatch Game choice since there's so much physical comedy that comes with being Susan Boyle. But I also loved the Queen Victoria choice from Cheryl, and she was able to really make that performance her own. Alexis being baby Ron DeSantis was so unhinged. I think he's a great choice to do as an adult, but making him a baby was so specific and weird and gave her, like, nowhere to go. And then Kennedy as Tabitha Brown, can we just, like, retire her as a Snatch Game character at this point? Because it's 0 for 2. And it's insane to me how Kennedy had one of the best Snatch games ever as Little Richard on season 7, and then 2 absolute duds in her returning seasons. And then for the performance aspect of this challenge, the rusical part, I think Alexis, Cheryl, and Lemon were for sure the standouts. Fierce was fine, but a bit low energy. And Kennedy missed, like, so many words for her parts, despite her physicality being top-notch. So I think that evens out to Cheryl and Lemon being the standouts of the week. They were able to nail both parts of the challenge. And then Kennedy is the worst, missing both aspects of the challenge. Now, for the runway, this was so fun. Summer of '69 was the theme, and it's one of those themes that kind of sound really specific at first, but then you realize how many angles you can take with it. And I just love the versatility of these looks. Even looking at all the eliminated girls, they all did amazing for this runway. The bottom 3 is unfortunately very clear here, and I know a lot of people wanted Cheryl to actually win this week, but I do think Lemon did a bit better in both the runway and the performance. I wanted our Shez to have a win so bad, and I do think she came very close again this week. But I think both times, this one and in the hole, her runway let her down, and she was just like narrowly edged out by another competitor. I guess I just don't understand why some people feel Lemon was heavily favored on the season. In my mind, she annihilated 5 of the 6 episodes, with her being kind of like middle of the road, but not subpar in the ball. I feel like this could be a case of people either disliking Lemon or being bored since she was kind of the clear front runner to win the whole thing just coming in to the season and looking at the cast. And like those are reasons that people are overlooking her extremely strong performance on this season. And I mean, like me, I'm human. I've been known to overlook a bad performance from one of my faves or underrate a performance from someone who I didn't want to win. Selena and Gigi being great examples of this in the past. But I don't even love Lemon like that. Like, I enjoy her a lot. I'm glad she had another chance. But she's not even in my, like, top 3 favorite people on the season. But, like, I cannot deny that she obliterated this competition and 1,000% deserved the win, as well as almost all of her placements. And I think even if she should have been safe for the ball, I also think she could have gotten a win for the roast. But back to this episode, I was really thinking we might get to see the Kennedy and Alexis lip sync that I think everybody wanted to see. But at the end of the day, Lemon was pulling her Trinity the Tuck moment. She wanted to go against the best. And despite Kennedy flopping this week the hardest, she saves Kennedy due to her track record throughout the whole season. And that leaves Alexis and Fierce in the bottom 2. Now, this is a pretty easy lip sync to judge, as Fierce was definitely checked out at this point, didn't even bother to change like everyone usually does for their lip syncs, and so Alexis wins and looks stunning while she does it, and we have our top 4 of the season. Now, I've been hard on the lip sync tournaments for All-Stars finales for a while now, specifically because they feel very small on the main stage, when they do the same thing for like a regular US season on a gigantic theater stage with thousands of people in the audience. But with this top 4, I think it was the perfect format. All 4 of them are incredible lip syncers, and I just knew they were going to slay it, and slay it they did. All of these finale lip syncs are hard to judge because all 4 of them put their everything into them. This entire finale is amazing because we see how much all 4 of them want it. And then having Raja there as well as just the cherry on top. Her presence is always so warm and calming, and I love her so much. Seeing the entire cast back together was great too. The dynamics were still there, and I could have watched a lot more episodes with these queens all together, if I'm being honest. I wish they would have just done like an 11-person cast, give us 8 episodes, but who knows what would have happened with more time. Breaking down the lip syncs, first off is Lemon and Kennedy, which of course was going to happen because they were both very scared to go up against each other. They lip synced to Hideaway by Kiza, and wow, this was an amazing lip sync. Not surprisingly. So many stunts, there's reveals, there's iconic moments, but I do think Lemon won this one. I think this is the easiest one to judge. Kennedy didn't know the words. Her lip sync was not as tight as Lemon's. But Kennedy did so well this season and should be so proud of herself. She's come so far since her time on season 7, and I'm so happy we got to see her back on our screens one last time. Next is So Many Men with Cheryl and Alexis, and God, this was so good. I liked this even better than the first one, if I'm being honest. They were both fighting so hard and matching the fun and the campiness of the song with also including their own styles of performing. If they made this one a double Shantae and put them both through to the finals, I would not have been mad. I've watched this like 7 times, and I feel like I feel differently after each time of like who actually won. I actually do think Cheryl going on to the top 2 with Lemon is a better storyline than Alexis, as Cheryl and Lemon were the 2 first outs on UK versus the World, and now they have the 2 most consistent track records on this season. Even though Cheryl didn't have a win, I don't think it would have been like odd for her to be in the finals just because of how much she slayed this entire season. Alexis in the final 2 with Lemon is fine though, but they just don't really have a storyline together, and I don't think Alexis had as much win equity as Cheryl did. Really, I went into this finale thinking either Kennedy or Lemon would take it, so after Kennedy was out in the first round, I pretty much knew it was going to be Lemon's to lose. So from a story perspective, yeah, I would have just put Cheryl in the top 2 since I do think that lip sync was even as hell with her and Alexis, but I don't think it was rigged that Alexis was there with Lemon either. In the last lip sync, it was also a photo finish. They both did so well to that Celine Dion song, and forgive me, I'm not a Celine fan, but that song was a bop. Never heard it before, but that was a bop. I was living for them both here, and it really just comes down to Lemon having the much better track record and deserving the win the entire season. But Alexis fought so hard in this finale and further proved as to why she's one of the greatest lip syncers of this entire franchise. But what makes me so happy about the season is that after Alexis, Lemon, and Cheryl didn't get to lip sync on their last All-Star seasons, and Kennedy only got to lip sync to ballads, it was great getting to see them truly all shine in this finale, doing what they all do best. This finale was so fun, so positive, and really finished this season off with a final good bang. Now, usually at this point in the video, I would either end it or do like a how the season should have went if it wasn't rigged. But to be honest, there's only 2 things in the season, 2 placements I disagreed with. And looking at the actual track record, which is this, and then looking at my track record, which has Lemon safe in the ball, but then winning the roast battles, not much changes, except Lemon's track record just gets more impressive. So I think in the end, it was smart to, you know, spread out the wins a little bit more. Lemon winning 3 out of 6 just is not super interesting when there's only 1 winner every week. But if I had to say, like, what is, like, the most unrigged version of the season, it would be this. But let me know what you think. Is this season one that you adored? Is this season one that you were, like, fine with? Do you agree with the winner? Do you think that I'm insane and Lemon is a flop? That's crazy. That's crazy if you think that, but I know that people think that. But I've had crazy opinions too. I'm not judging. But I love this season so much. And now I'm so excited for UK. So excited for UK. I was going to watch Global All-Stars, but so far I've only heard bad things. So I think I'm going to sit that out until I hear better things and see if the season's going to be, like, better. So I'm very excited for UK 6, which I think that promo's dropping very soon. And I know Canada's coming up. Like, there's so many good things in the works with Drag Race, and I cannot wait for all of it. Let me know what you think about this video in the comments below. And also, special thank you to Surfshark VPN for sponsoring today's video. The links to all of my social medias are in the description below. If you are not already, make sure you are subscribed. And I want to thank you all so much for watching. I will catch you all in the next one.